starters, I'm here to show that Russia is not only boring and academic as you might think by the end of the discussion. It's very important whether Russia is part of Europe or not. But I would like to quote my favorite Russian saying that you cannot understand Russia using your mind. You either love it or you hate it. And you can't hear me. Speak up, okay. So I will just show you bits and pieces of clips and entertainment to wake you up before the tea break. But first of all, because we're speaking about Europe, I have to introduce my university, which is in Prague. It's very old, and you can see some of the famous graduates, so that's just something I owe to my home university. And now the outline of the presentation. Firstly, who is Vladimir Putin and who are we even speaking about? Then the elections and the protest that followed after the elections last year, and what happened since the election. So the stages of Russian history since 2000 until today can be summarized maybe in 4 points. At first, nobody knew who is Vladimir Putin. Then he became the president twice. Then there were 2 men in charge of the whole country, and now we have this new version of Putin presidency currently taking place. So who is Mr. Putin was really the question on everybody's lips in the year 2000, and it's also the question that the journalists asked representatives of Russian Federation on the Davos World Economic Forum in January of 2000, and no one could really answer from the Russian delegation. You might know that he was born in 1952, he was in the KGB. Then in August 1999, he became the prime minister after the fall of government, and as Eva just said, he stepped in as acting president on December 31st of 1999. History development. It was staged in Germany as an agent, James Bond agent. Anyways, I think it is important to understand that Vladimir Putin used to be a very popular man in Russia, and he's quite a phenomenon in the media as well. That's why he was president twice even. He's famous for his sports performance. He also plays hockey, rides a motorcycle, plane. Formula 1.
Classic.
He's also a famous diver. There was a case when he found pieces of pottery, very ancient. He had to admit afterwards that they were planted there for him. Because it was suspicious that they were nice and clean. From the bottom of the sea. He's also talented in other ways, and of course he loves it. He is very popular with the young generation as well. This is a present of the students of journalism of the Moscow State University for Mr. President's birthday. And this is, and now we don't have sound. This is an example of a popular song in Russia, which is about, I want to find a man like Putin. Okay.
You have to increase the sound. You haven't increased it.
Do you?
I don't think so.
The lever was right down the bottom, which didn't push it.
Tereza, on the actual computer, it's not mute anymore, but you didn't actually turn it up. On YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. No. Where is the person who said help me?
Find the book.
If you don't have something that's in the sense.
Keep moving, Teresa, and we'll see if we can go
Yes.
through the T-way.
So, but this has to have sound, but it doesn't matter. It's one of the clips that appeared last year before the elections, campaigning for Mr. Putin. And it's a clip by a group that call themselves Putin's Army. You can read the subtitles since we don't have the sound.
I have a little portable speaker, I think.
Anyways, this group
Perhaps leave it for now, and we'll see if we
started
can get to
a
the
competition on the Russian version of Facebook, which is called Contacted, collecting videos of what people would do for President Putin's victory. They were offering iPads for the best videos. So the question was, who is sponsoring all this? Because you can see it. And she has the cross, which is also important. But this needs sound.
Take the speakers.
Anyways, moving on to illustrate the position of Mr. Putin during his first 2 terms as a president. This is a man who was, at the time before the economic crisis hit Russia, as you can see, number 9 on the world's list of billionaires. And next is a short clip showing the interaction of Mr. Putin with this man, who you would think would be very powerful.
Conscious of the time, Teresa, it might be best to just keep moving the presentation. We can get something.
Yes, I don't want to pursue this series.
Все, пишите. Идите ко мне.
The billionaire.
Как договор?
Like kidding me.
He's like a little boy.
только так, ручку, видите?
Classic Putin.
So just to sum up the first two terms, there were not only negatives to his presidency, he stabilized the economy, the social situation in the country after the chaos that happened during the Yeltsin presidency. The country was growing. If I discuss whether it was because of the prices of oil or there were also other reasons, he ended the war in Chechnya and returned Russia on the map of international relations. Here is the growth of Russian GDP.
Cheers.
So, year 2010. The unemployment decreased during these two terms under Medvedev. But there are also negative sides to what happened. The whole country was centralized, monopolized. All the media became basically state-owned. Freedom of speech was radically decreased, and human rights, as you all know, are always an issue when we think about Russia these days. This is the Freedom House rating, which went up on the democracy score during the presidency, which is bad because the higher the number, the worse is the situation. 7 is the highest, so currently it's at 6.18, and it's the worst. Then after his second term, he brought this man into the picture, Dmitry Medvedev, who stepped in as the president during 2008 until May this year. And last year we witnessed the return to power of Vladimir Putin. First there were parliamentary elections scheduled for December 4th, 2011. Already before that, in September, Putin announced that he will be running for presidency and basically that he wants to return as the president in 2012, which met with an unexpectedly negative reaction from the population. Already in November, he was booed out by the audience in a boxing match, which was unprecedented at that time. Then the elections took place. Not surprisingly, United Russia, Mr. Putin's party, won with almost 50%, although that meant a decrease in the amount of seats that they had. But there was reported a lot of fraud, bell stuffing, carousel voting, and so on. Allegedly, according to experts, the numbers were increased by fraud by around 20%. This is one of the examples of so-called proofs of rigging of votes. The red line is results of United Russia, and apparently, because they always speak around round numbers, it means that somebody just manually put the results and they were round numbers. But I don't understand this kind of math, but it was one of the examples of so-called proof that the election was rigged. The election resulted in massive protests all over the country, which is something very significant because during the first two terms, there was nothing of this sort happening in Russia.
For over a decade, Vladimir Putin has been the undisputed master of Russia. But after claims he fixed parliamentary elections, tens of thousands of middle-class Russians took to the streets, demanding his resignation. They put on a symbol of protest, white ribbons.
Если говорить откровенно, я когда увидел на экране что-то такое здесь вот у некоторых на груди, честно вам скажу, ну, неприлично, но тем не менее, я решил, что это пропаганда борьбы со СПИДом, что это такие, пардон, контрацептивы повесили, думаю, зачем развернули, только непонятно.
Hundreds of thousands in the immediate direction filled the streets of Moscow protesting against the results of the election. he did not take the situation seriously, at least in the media. So who actually went into the streets were young people, ICT literate people who used the internet and blogs, and this is according to a poll that they did among the protesters. They made an example of a typical protester in Russian streets. One of the reasons for the turnout in the streets apparently is that the Russian middle class is growing and internet users, the number of internet users grew rapidly since the year 2000. So the goal for the demonstration and the communication among the protesters was taking place on the internet. Here's some more pictures from the demonstrations. What followed was the presidential election on March 4th, 2012. Here you can see the candidates. Some of them are the usual suspects: Communist Gennady Zyuganov and Nationalist Vladimir Zhirinovsky, who take part in almost every presidential election. Putin, in response to the protests, proposed new measures for the presidential election, which meant transparent boxes and CCTV in all the election rooms. He invested a lot of money into making sure that he can prove that there is no rigging taking place. However, they just found new methods. So some of the examples were last-minute polling stations. So they opened new polling stations right before the election, which of course did not have the CCTV and the transparent boxes. And then there was an issue with enterprises with so-called continuous production cycles, which means that the people can vote at any time and they don't have to register for a particular station. So they just put them all on a bus and took them to several polling stations in the same day. But Mr. Putin still got 63.6%, which means that only about 10 to 20% of votes were actually falsified, which in the end means that the majority of the population still did support him. This is his teary-eyed reaction to victory, which was followed by a very strong speech. So the question in everybody's mind after the election was whether Russia is headed for a change or not, and how should we interpret 2 minutes? Okay. How should we interpret the developments? There were optimist and pessimist scenarios, that the opposition will grow stronger and it will unite, and there will be one opposition leader, and that Putin will start reforming, or he will have new Duma elections because they were falsified, or he will have a different prime minister than Dmitry Medvedev, or that he will retire. Then the pessimist scenarios were that he will, on the other hand, clamp down against the protesters and take a stronger grip on power, or that he will retire. That's also a pessimist scenario because they fear that then the country would just fall into chaos. One of the things that did happen was that independent candidates took part in local elections and actually were successful. So you can see one of the local representatives in Moscow. She's 20 years old. So maybe things were headed for a change. But since I only have 2 minutes, I will skip the bus riot thing since I'm sure everybody.
Express yourself.
And I will just quickly say some of the examples of policy that was instated since June, which leads us more towards the pessimist scenario, except for the he will resign part. So the fines for unsanctioned protests were increased. There were steps taken against NGOs which receive foreign support. Now they have to re-register and be labeled as foreign agents. An internet blacklist, which is not censorship against really the public society, but critics fear that it can be used as such. And the last event in January, a ban on Americans adopting Russian children, which resulted again in protest. But this time it is only tens of thousands of people and not hundreds like last year. So thank you very much.